Alright guys, welcome back to the YouTube channel. Thank you for clicking on this video. This video is about how to catch bass when they're lockjaw or they just won't bite. This is specifically for the Midwest, but this will work in any region of America that you are in or any part of the world as long as you're trying to catch smallmouth or largemouth bass. Bass are lockjaw in the Midwest. Success usually comes down to extreme slowing or extreme downsizing. So like if you're going to be using like a 3/4 ounce bait, try to go down to maybe a quarter or a half ounce. The big bass will still try to eat these. It's not that for bass, you don't have to have the biggest lure to catch the biggest fish. Now for muskie and such, you probably do. You do need bigger baits, which is why they give you bigger baits for these fish. But for bass, they're extremely aggressive. So you do not need to have the biggest bait on the pond to catch a big bass. And because Midwest waters often experience high fishing pressure and significant temperature swings, you guys in the Midwest know this very well. Even right now, up here in Michigan, we are in a false spring where it's like 60 degrees instead of 20 degrees. So this would probably be a great time to go bass fishing, but I'm pretty busy. But traditional power fishing often fails during a slow bite. So like when you're fishing in 45 to 50 degree water, you just are not catching much stuff. So this is really for you guys, especially you beginners, on how to catch bass when you aren't catching anything. So first off, for our number one, we have Master the Midwest Finesse, or the Ned rig, as is also called. The Ned rig was specifically popularized by Midwest anglers for days when nothing was biting. Along with this, I also recommend having a Texas rig on standby with a Senko. We will talk about that later. And then this is probably my favorite bait, especially for your spawning. But the lure, it's usually a small 2.5 or 3-inch bait, a Senko in half. You can buy specific Ned rig Senkos, as I call them, Senkos. But you don't need to do that. So you can just buy some Senkos that you like and then cut them in half, cut them in thirds. That'll work perfectly fine. Yeah, so like the actual Ned rig, you can get like a Z-Man TRD. Those work great. I've used these a lot, especially in earlier spring, and they work very well. And then you want it on a 1/16 ounce to a 1/10 ounce jig head. And they make specific Ned rig jig heads, but you just really need like a simple, basic jig head. You don't need all this fancy stuff. Now, I do recommend it because it is the most best looking Ned rig, but you don't obviously need it. And at number two, we have downsize your profile. So bass are ignoring the standard 6-inch worm or 6-inch Senko. That's your normal size for Senkos or large spinner baits. This may be key into going into smaller forage microbaits, basically. So you want a 3 to 4-inch straight wall, straight tail worms, or small 2-inch grubs and tubes. You can get these at Bass Pro. You can get these really anywhere. You can also make them, which comment down below if you guys think I should start making baits and then posting that on here if you guys think that would be a good idea. Your cost versus reward. So these are usually a little bit more cheaper, and then also your reward might be greater. So you may not be getting that 5-pound bass you really want, but that's not really what early spring and what these times of tough bites are about. This is just about trying to catch a fish. So if you're in my area, Gun Lake, we always have a tournament there for bass fishing, and that is probably the hardest lake I have ever fished on to try and catch a bass. So this would be a good video for that lake or for any lake that you guys have trouble catching fish on. So in cold or pressured waters, bass stop wasting energy. So they aren't just chasing fish, chasing different baits all across everywhere like spinner baits. They're not going to be chasing all of your big baits or any of your moving baits. So a small, easy meal is more likely to get a bite than a large chatterdonk or something, whatever. Or an aggressive lure that requires a chase. They won't go after that when the biting is slow. And next up, guys, for number 3, we have change your timing and location. So for Midwest bass behaviors, they shift dramatically based on the sun and weather fonts, and especially as we talked about in our previous video, which you guys should go watch that. That's 8 tips to bass fishing tournaments in the spring. But anyways, you want to focus on those water temps in these times of changing air temps. Midday advantage, while early morning is the rule in the summer, during water transitions, especially in the spring, this can work for the fall as well. But midday is going to be your best bet. Never would have known from fishing in the summer, but yeah. So for the spring, you want to be fishing midday. This is when the sun's going to be highest, when the sun is going to be hottest, making that water temperature at the surface level a little bit hotter than what it is down in the bottom. And so this is going to make the fish a little bit more aggressive. It's not going to be a lot, but it's going to be enough to where you want to be fishing then instead of in the morning. This is about like between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. is probably your best bet for this time. The transition zones also for this, you want to be looking for bluff walls. I'll put a post up here, or steep drop-offs also right here, where different depths are easily accessible, and bass will be moving vertically along these walls to find the most comfortable temperature. And then also you want your windward banks right here. Fish the side of the lake that the wind is blowing into, like we also talked about in our 8 tips of bass fishing in the spring for tournaments. We also talked about how you gotta fish where the wind is blowing, because that's where the bait is going to be going. So that's where you want to be fishing at. That'll really help with you catching more fish, is to fish that side of the lake or the north side of the lake, as we talked about in the spawn. And finally, we have our number 4. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not gay. I'm not actually gay. I'm a Christian. But yeah. Anyways, you want to be using reaction triggers. So if a slow presentation fails, try to force a reflex strike by making the lure behave erratically. So like a banging structure. So purposely crash a square bill, crank, or a jig into a stump or rock or dock post. It's going to make a little bit of vibration in the water, kind of like when you like have a knock or something. Like you can hear that audio. You can hear those sound waves. You can hear those sound waves. So that's kind of like what it is in the water. For water vibrations is like sound waves in the air. That makes sense. The sudden deflection and puff of silt also will trigger a strike from a bass that is nearby or just watching the lure. So this is not like when you're fishing muskie where you have to have like a perfect replica of the bait. If they see movement like that, especially in this time of day, in this time of the year, they're probably going to bite if you have bass around. That's key. You got to have fish around you. And then also you want to pause it. So with a jerk bait, instead of always just jerking it, instead of always just pulling your rod, then just reel and stop, stop for about a second or two. I found out that this is actually when the bass hit the hardest and the most. And it'll feel like there's like a log at the end of your line. And then you set the hook, and then you feel like something's like, yeah, it's a cool feeling. But also, and then even pausing for 10 to 20 seconds, especially if you've got a deep dive or jerk bait, this is going to work really well because it's going to bring it from really close to the bottom to almost at surface level. So you're reaching, instead of just a single spot in the water in that area, you're going about 20 feet or so, wherever you're fishing. You'll be getting that full range, and the bass will follow it up, and then you can also bring it back down. And so instead of going in a straight line across inside the water, you'll be going like a zigzag, something like that. Also, you want struggle lures. So this is probably going to be good I'll post a couple of these up there. And then, so I'll just give you guys a couple examples for your lure type. So for finesse, you want like a 5 or 6 inch Senko. And this is iconic for slow horizontal fall or finicky fish that can't resist. This is probably your go-to of everything. And also your jerkbait, especially the Megabass Vision 110. It suspends perfectly in a water column, allowing long pauses to be very good for this type of thing. And when you're at the bottom, like we talked about in our first point, and at the bottom, like we said in our first and foremost previous point, you want the Z-Man Finesse TRD Ned rig or just a makeshift Ned rig. It doesn't really matter, especially with bass. But yeah, stand straight up on the bottom, mimicking a small craw or a minnow, like a minnow trying to get some food off the bottom. Bass really like that. that's it for today, guys. I hope you really enjoyed this video. I'm still trying to learn all this stuff, so be patient with me. Comment what you think was good about this video, what you think I could have done better, and also subscribe to support the channel, because I kind of need a little bit of money to also fund some of the things that I'm going to be doing during the summer. But that's up to you if you want to subscribe or if you don't want to. Doesn't matter to me. I would really appreciate it if you could. And then I also want to be doing these giveaways that I'm doing every year or every week. So just support a small channel. Give a like if you think that this was worth your time. And then also check out our previous video that I've been kind of talking about this whole video. So I hope you guys have a good rest of your day, and thanks for watching. Peace.